Are you an MRO looking to reduce your turnaround times? In the studio today, I have Michael Hamlin, President Field Operations of Realization. Realization brings organizations the power of execution intelligence. Customers who use their software see 20 to 50% faster turnaround times and 10 to 30% improvement in productivity. Michael joins us today to tell us a case study about how a leading MRO became best in class. Michael, can you tell us a little about this customer?
Of course, and thank you for having me today. The case study that I want to share with you today is about an aircraft MRO that has about 600 artisans spread across 3 different hangars. The work they do is comprised of both light and heavy maintenance checks, as well as some planned and unplanned line maintenance efforts.
Can you give us some background on why they wanted to change?
I think the one thing that's important for everybody to keep in mind while I'm presenting this case study is that overall the operation was doing very well. Their on-time delivery was great, and customers were really very happy with the work that they were performing. However, there had always been discussions about could they reduce their turnaround times, because what they felt was that reducing the turnaround time could bring them value in 3 areas. First, it really meant more value for their customers. If they could reduce the turnaround time, this meant they could return aircraft back to service sooner. And by returning aircraft back to service sooner, now they had the opportunity to increase the revenue that those aircraft were generating. Second, by reducing the turnaround times, it would actually give the organization an opportunity to increase the number of visits they could do without trying to increase the capacity of the organization. And today, with the challenges around trying to be able to hire people, especially trained mechanics or a lot of the specialty inspectors and such that are needed, it's very difficult. The number that are available out there in the industry is limited. So reducing the turnaround time, being able to expose that capacity to do more with the resources that you have is a big value to the operation. And really the third value of going faster meant that it would increase their flexibility to perform drop-in work. And as I said, part of the work that they did was unplanned line maintenance, or AOGs. And there was always a struggle with would they have the capacity to take on those drop-in jobs and not affect the work that was in the hangar. So by reducing their turnaround times, now they had the flexibility to be able to take in more of that drop-in work and still make sure they produced the hangar work on time.
Before we get into the details, can you tell us what results your client was able to achieve by engaging with Realization?
There was 2 primary metrics that we were measuring in this implementation. The first was turnaround time. And our customers saw a reduction in their turnaround time of 32%, from 25 days to just 17 days for C-checks. And it took about 3 weeks from the time we went live until they were able to recognize this increase in speed. The second metric was around productivity. There, they saw an increase of 17% in the first 6 months. They were before able to produce just 78,000 man-hours per month. Now they were producing 91,000 man-hours per month.
Those are great results. What were some of the problems they were facing before they implemented Realization's execution intelligence solutions?
When an aircraft would come into the hangar, planners would start by creating a daily plan of which work cards should be worked on which day, and within the day, which work cards should be worked in which order. So they were really starting with a very detailed day-by-day plan of how the work cards should be executed. Now the aircraft would come in, they'd start following this sequence of the work cards, and they begin to do their disassemblies, moving into inspections, onto repairs, and so on until the aircraft was done. The problem was that even beginning on day 1, things didn't go as planned. Some activities would take longer. Right? Of course, these are aging aircraft. they never go exactly as planned. So even the disassembly would take longer. Or there'd be an AOG, and line maintenance would need more resources. So now the resources that you thought you were going to get would be pulled away. Or another aircraft that was supposed to return to service yesterday was still stuck here because something failed in test. And now, instead of getting all the resources that you expected, maybe you were short 2 or 3 mechanics. Right? But all of these different uncertainties were happening every single day. And soon it became impossible to follow the schedule. So now the planners were forced to go back in and try to redo the plan based on all these uncertainties and how they thought they were going to reschedule work to try to make sure they still got the aircraft out on time. And this was an extremely manual process, right? So they had the plan, they had it in software, very detailed, but at the end of the day, the only way to change it was to go back in, sequence the tasks, move the tasks, relink things, come up with a new critical path, if you would, to try to shorten the time, because now, of course, they were behind schedule, but they still had to deliver on time. And all of this effort would take sometimes days to be able to get the plan back to a point where supervisors could follow the sequence. And at that point, it was very difficult for anybody to be able to follow that plan and know where should I have my resources on which day and at which time, which meant that throughout the day, work was constantly waiting for people. I'd finish something, now I'd have to call somebody and find that electrician that I needed to come unhook a box, or I'd have to call the cleaners to come and clean an area so that we could finish the inspection, right? There was always a lot of wait time between each and every one of the work cards.
How did you help them overcome those problems?
Now that we knew what the problem was, the solution became very clear. And the solution was how do we put in a real-time scheduling software to be able to provide priorities and instructions regardless of the uncertainties that are seen day to day. And you can really think of this as the GPS system that you have in your car. That GPS system starts with a roadmap, and now, based on the decisions that you make and others make and what is happening in real time, it's adjusting and giving you instructions on how you should change to make sure that you're meeting your destination in the shortest possible time. Right? So we need to start with a roadmap. And what does that roadmap look like? Well, in the case of an aircraft MRO, that roadmap is really at the zone level of the aircraft. Right? So zone by zone, how do we move through the disassembly, the inspection, the repairs, reassembly, testing, and get that aircraft back into operation. And then the uncertainties, right? So as you're driving, your uncertainties come from, are there accidents? Is there just a backup or traffic jam because more traffic is coming onto the highway, right? Is there construction going on? These types of things. For the aircraft MRO, these uncertainties can be just tasks or work cards taking longer. They might be that parts become unavailable, resources aren't available right now. They're stuck on another project, or they're working on an AOG. Right? So there's many uncertainties that can come up that can cause the plan to have to, or the roadmap to have to be changed. And the final piece of the GPS system really comes down to the decisions that you as a driver have to make. What lane should I be in? When should I stop? Apply the brakes, right? When should I pull over for a rest? Right? Same thing again in the MRO world. Right? Now I need supervisors really on a day-to-day basis to make decisions about which work cards should be worked in which order. Based on what happened yesterday, the crew that I have today, the parts that I have today. A supervisor needs to look at all these things and really decide what are the appropriate work cards that I should be working on. And the system should be giving them a list of here's the work cards that are available, and from those the supervisor can now pick the order in which they're done. And this is the real-time scheduling system that we put in place. The other piece that it provided was now, because that roadmap was constantly changing, a supervisor could look forward, or management could look forward and see, where am I going to have bottlenecks in the future? And am I getting work done fast enough to be able to complete this aircraft on time?
Wow, this all sounds great. Were there any other benefits the client realized by using two-tier planning?
I think the additional value was really in the fact that reports that they were getting out of the software were now reliable. Because the plans were something that was being followed, all the other reports for management was now something they could believe in. They had reliable delivery dates. Were they on time? Were they going to be late? If they were going to be late, what was causing it? And where should management get involved to try to reduce the time of projects that were going to be late? And additionally, supervisors now had a clear priority of what work needed to be accomplished today. Even though they were still making the fine micro decisions around which work cards should be worked in which order, they were getting a clear signal about which ones needed to be worked and what were the most important ones to get done first. And all around, right, this really meant less day-to-day meetings focused around schedule. Right? Before, supervisors, planners, even managers were spending 3 and 4 times a day, 15 to 20 minutes, focused around making sure resources were busy and working on what they thought were the right things. Now this was all being directed by the software. Anybody could log in, they could see what the priorities were, and they could make sure that resources were in the right place, whether it was today or whether they were planning for tomorrow or the next day. And so they saved all this time of not having to have these daily micro scheduling meetings.
If people are interested, how do they explore if this is an approach for them?
That's great. I think the key to successfully implementing execution intelligence in any MRO is building a good two-tier project plan. And this is where you should start. If you're interested in learning more about how execution intelligence and two-tier planning can help you reduce turnaround times and increase productivity within your projects, reach out to us at MRO@realization.com. One of our experts will contact you to discuss execution intelligence and answer your questions. Thank you.